here, episode 10, Montana Voices, and for reasons that you're soon going to find out, it's going to entitled Blue Lives Matter, or at least Lives That Matter, depending on your opinion after the show. Certainly going to get a pretty polar here on episode 2, but first some business.
Indeed. As always, if you would like to listen to our podcast, you're probably already at this website as it is currently, but if you'd like to go there or send it off to your friends and relatives, it's going to be montanavoicespodcast.com. If you would like to send your concerns, griefs to us of any sort, it's going to be email at montanavoices@gmail.com. Our Twitter handle is going to be at Montana_voices. Our Facebook account is going to be at Montana Voices Podcast. Twitch I keep plugging this quite a bit here, but folks, I tell you, we are very, very close to getting up and underway on there. Twitch.tv/Montana Voices, and we're now on YouTube as well. You can find us at Montana Voices Podcast.
Yep, and YouTube is a great place to share. Everything's there, obviously, a day after, but, best place, MontanaVoicesPodcast.com. And I think in the near future, depending on what sort of free time I end up with this week, we will get the RSS feeds updated for Google Play and iTunes once again.
Looking forward to it there. They are quite the handful trying to deal with those people, but, let's hope this is not the episode that they listen to when they decide to reauthorize us, I guess would be the best term for that.
They should be all for it here, though, regardless of opinions. They're not for them. But on iTunes, actually easier to work with. Last time we needed to update the feed, we just sent them a quick email, and it did take like a week and a half to get to it, but they responded back that they updated our feed, and so some of our Buzzsprout episodes are still on iTunes. Google Play, you actually have to talk to a person on the phone, which I'm adamantly against.
Are you kidding me? Like a person? That's... wow.
Yeah, like a real live person. Maybe I don't know where this person is, but maybe we'll just scrap the whole thing on Google Play and start over again. That's the best way here.
Maybe. That really blows me away, though, that to start out with, even that for something so stupid and menial compared to YouTube, where anything goes, that footage of your cousin twirling around in your sister's prom dress in the snow will be uploaded in 4K and be there in 70 years. But it sounds like, Jimmy, you're going to have to make quite the case here to a real person.
Yeah, I'm adamantly against. So I guess we'll recap on our old topics and then dive into our new topics, which we're going to outline before we actually discuss them, and then dive right into it. We have no corrections. We were absolutely 100% accurate in the last episode, according to people whom listened. And that's about all I have there. Some activity on Facebook as far as comments and stuff, but not the usual vitriol that we, that you get when you're any sort of person that, puts out your political beliefs in a public forum. So good luck there. So let's you run through the new topics here.
Indeed. Well, to start out with here, let's go through the whole docket of what we have going down on tonight's episode. First off, we'll be touching back on the Great Falls heating issue. We had touched on this previously, but I did not get a say in that. That was the Country Road episode with Chris Smith's fill-in. So we'll be touching on that real quick. Then we have a little bit of talk regarding Havre's growth, and then also police pay across the state in various towns. Then we're going to go into different pay grades for different positions. We'll also be getting into things over at the Hardin Jail, and then we'll be diving a little bit into Montana's civil forfeiture issues. And then after that, we're going to get into some odds and ends with Blackfeet and their current gripes with the federal government. And then in regards to that, we'll then segue off to native disproportion. Oh, that is a hard word for me.
And it's misspelled on the doc. So that's disproportionate incarceration that we're diving into.
Indeed. And then I see national discussion on the docket. I'm very excited here. I assume that's in regards to current events afar in the area that I like to refer to as non-Tana.
certainly Montana. It's a silly place. You don't want to go there. But we're not an island, as you know, and these issues do affect us, and certainly the national discourse does. So we'll. It's not the main focus of our cast here, but we'll, certainly touch on it.
For sure. Sucks for them. We're going to touch on it.
Guess we'll first dive into Montana Power. At the turn of the 1990s, Montana had a wholly interstate managed utility company, and we enjoyed some of the lowest rates and best service in the country. Come the 2000s, and the majority of Montana utility subscribers were writing checks to an out-of-state company for rates up to 113% higher than the regulated rates of the 90s. The executive of Montana's own electrical utility had taken large bonuses and moved out of state. But what more should we expect from a company founded by the Anaconda Copper Mining Company but to fleece the state and move? In 1997, Montana Power had a legal monopoly. For almost 85 years, the company had operated profitably. Formed by the Anaconda Copper Mining Company in 1912, it was only a byproduct to serve residential customers, but its main intent was to simplify purchasing power for the Butte mines and the railroad. A merger brought four companies together. I suspect that rates were regulated so that private consumers would not subsidize large businesses. However, others suggest that the PSC operated on the whims of Montana Power and the Anaconda mine. In a quick session of events that could only have been orchestrated by a central faction, Montana Power would wholly exit the power distribution and generation business, and it would run 21,000 miles of fiber optics right before the dot-com bubble burst and before new technologies increased the carrying capacity of single fibers. Perhaps this is the debate if the means justify the ends, but today Montana enjoys a vast fiber optic network, a lot of which is in areas that would be 100% uneconomically feasible today. Heck, it was economically unfeasible in 1997. In a late-term session, the Montana legislature voted to deregulate. There was little debate, and was signed without questioning from the public by then-Governor Mark Roscoe. This caught Montanans by surprise. We were further surprised when Montana sold off its power generation infrastructure to PPL, that's Pennsylvania Power and Light, and later sold off its power distribution to Northwestern Energy. The promise of competition and choice of electrical distributor never came to fruition. The distribution company would later go bankrupt and fell under re-regulation in 2005. The company survives, and our Public Service Commission is charged with regulating companies in the free market. The free market has decided that Montana should produce more natural gas than it consumes. However, all that natural gas should be exported, leaving Montanans buying natural gas from the East Coast. Montana Power sold the bull and used the funds to build a fiber optic network. It did so without consulting its shareholders, but instead was operated under the direction of advisors from Goldman Sachs. It would be caught up in litigation until its death in 2003. The fiber network it built would be sold to 360 Networks as part of a bankruptcy settlement for $28 million. For reference, you would be lucky to bury fiber across town for under $1 million. 360 Networks got 21,000 miles of fiber. 360 Networks was in bankruptcy themselves during the purchase, and eventually got absorbed into Zayo Networks, whom even today are some of the only fiber connections from Montana to major exchanges. They are also the only long-haul fiber into certain areas in Montana. Montana has an advanced fiber network, and that has given it an edge in this information age. Our low electrical rates under re-regulation, they are matching rates from the 90s adjusted for inflation, coupled with the network availability, has spawned businesses such as Bitcoin Farm in Bonner, network co-location in most major cities, and we have gotten connectivity to some of the least populated regions of Montana. Was this newfound opportunity worth the loss of pensions, jobs for thousands, and the regulatory and economic nightmare that ensued? So, let's dive right into Great Falls High heating, or lack thereof, I guess. There was a lot of discussion on this, and I think in the Country Road episode, I pointed out to Chris that looks like Great Falls High is having the same issues that they had when I went to high school there.
Which old building has terrible heating. You don't say. Wow. Yeah. No, I remember full well, going to Great Falls High as well, and when it was winter, you had your hoodie on. Everybody did.
And the uneven heating is, I think, the worst part of it. It was, some rooms where you're boiling hot, where you're shedding layers, and others, you can see your breath. So there is, but this is not a new concern. And some of the comments I saw in the last one were regards to someone like I went to school in the 70s, and this was a problem then. And of course, the people that are, anti-administration and establishment in Great Falls are using this to poke jabs. You guys have had 50 years to fix this, and you haven't?
Well, I would like to take that time to point out specifically that from what I've seen within the infrastructure of Great Falls High, God, I hope this isn't like public knowledge, and I hope this doesn't spark anything, but they still have some asbestos, or at least when I was going to school there, they still had some asbestos pipes in the basement areas. And you could tell they were asbestos because there were huge prints on the side that said, "This is asbestos, do not touch it." And,
it's really fine if you're not, tossing it up in the air and running through it, I assume.
Indeed.
It's best left alone.
For certain. So, to have an infrastructure like that, I'm sure, like, the ventilation isn't going through anything with asbestos pipes or ducting. But
well, it's oil heat over there, or is that right? If I remember correctly.
I think that's hard to say. I thought they have your standard boiler like everybody else in the district would, I believe.
Is the boiler oil, or is that water?
I believe it's water.
Well, I'm no HVAC engineer, so
I'm not. We should really get one of the custodial engineers on the show here sometime.
I actually know a guy, so.
Oh, perfect. Well, let's get in touch and ask him a thing or two about a thing or two.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm not sure what sort of infrastructure they have there, but I do remember, what do you call them, the catacombs below Great Falls High? I've been privy to
yes.
do just a little bit of it, and one, it's scary and interesting, and definitely ancient, so I'm not surprised that there's asbestos down there.
Yeah, so, when I read everything going on with it, all I could think, I would personally thought back to, like, my times in the more colder classrooms where some of us would come in and sit down and someone would make a comment of how, God, it's fucking cold in here today, and you'd still have, the group of kids that come in wearing shorts and no coat on, and just, I'm not even cold. Like,
whoa, we got a badass over here.
Exactly. It's all you can think is like, yeah, whoa. The thermostat in here says, we're below 60 well, so, and yeah, you're doing great. So, all right, fella.
So sort of a interesting discussion of the future of Great Falls High over there. That was built in the 1912, or I don't remember the year. Do you recall off the top of your head?
Yeah, it was around that era. Early as shit, I know that much. But in order for them to make the upgrade that needs to happen for that, it sounded like it was going to take a significant chunk of time to do. And that significant chunk is a time period that they really can't afford to go without a high school for the kids. So, if you have kids in there, you got to have heat. So,
more than 3 months, it sounds like. You have the summer, and then I suppose you do not need heating in the last couple months of the spring.
Indeed, but then you start to need air conditioning potentially. However, that place doesn't have air conditioning at all, I don't think so.
I don't think so. Not as I remember. I remember, sweating quite a bit.
Open a window. It's open. Well, class will be over in 30 minutes, so don't worry about it,
Yeah, I'm in the same room all day. Just deal with it. Pretty much.
Oh, how inconsiderate, those little sons of guns.
Well, maybe that ties further, because that is, of course, an ancient building, early 1900s, at least, and that brings in the discussion, if there is asbestos down there, that, of course, is asbestos removal, and the care and management of that is becoming a sort of dying art, as there's less asbestos to do, and the crews that work on that are becoming more and more specialized, and also far and few in between, so that any asbestos problem is getting, as time passes, more expensive to take care of.
I assume it's a dying art literally from mesothelioma, potentially.
I see what you did there. There's proper PPE. My uncle used to work in asbestos. I think in the 70s, even back when the market was hot. So, and there's a whole bunch of special things they do as far as clothing and protective equipment, and essentially everything gets burned or something. I don't know.
Somebody else's problem, who cares? So, but yeah, no, either way, to just, I'm downright a little disappointed to see all of the guffaw directed specifically at Tammy Lacey over this issue, as if she was the one down there, dialing back the thermostat, saying, it's all right, kids,
And I understood that she went down there and personally cut down some trees.
Cut down some trees. Oh, yeah, the trees. Yeah, the trees. I forgot about the trees. All of a sudden, the town's filled with Loraxes,
Absolutely. Well, that was another thing that there was outcry about. I guess in between the new building and the old building, some trees were cut down to make way for an expansion. I understand it's going to be an enclosure between the two buildings now.
Indeed. It's hilarious that they are... there was so much backlash about them cutting down these trees. But, I'm sure this was when you were going to school. It was the same deal as when I was going to school. For everybody who was a freshman or sophomore, if you had any kind of class at all in South Campus, was like, God damn it, it's cold. I don't want to go outside. Why do they build a second building? Why couldn't they just build onto this, first building? This is stupid. And finally, someone in the top administration listened to the kids, I feel like, and was like, you know what? We're going to give the people what they want. Kids, we're going to give you a walkway. And they gave them a walkway, but we got to cut down some trees. And, oh no! They got angry. So it's just, they want their cake, but they want to eat it as well, as how it feels to me.
It just feels like there is a group of people that are just angry about the establishment and, the administration for anything that's, status quo in Great Falls.
What were they supposed to do instead? I feel exactly the same in that regard.
I mean, I can't say. I'm not sure what the sudden concern for, was it 5-6 trees? Not much. Even if they cut them all down, there wasn't that many to begin with. So
yeah, either that or there was a stop order in place or something, I believe. But, I didn't see any one of those people advocating to throw down even more levy money so that we could construct a tunnel from the main campus over to the south campus there.
On the contrary, they were advocating against it because of mismanagement of trees.
That's unfortunate. So, hopefully we can delve more into that. I feel like there's a ton of controversy around the Great Falls public school system that could be checked into, but no one wants to take a public face with that, so hopefully we can get some anonymous sources on here at some point.
Yeah, we have the resources to accommodate that as well. But in the meantime, let's move further north. Havre, great place. They have all the weather of the High Line, but little of the economic opportunity up there. But they do have it, I hear.
They do. And, I got to say, for some, there is quite a bit of economic opportunity there as well. A lot of the local utility companies certainly do pay well. And then as well, the big top employer up there, I believe, still is Burlington Northern. So the rail line pays. Mr. Buffett pays.
He does.
Well, still waiting for that check for us as well. I'm sure they're all getting theirs weekly. So ours is in the mail.
So the Havre Herald, which is there's either two newspapers in Havre. I'm not sure if this is a print edition or an online edition similar to the ECD Beat or the Electric down in Great Falls or the Missoula Current. But they are, I guess contrary to the Havre Daily News, which is ironically not daily, but they are pondering the question as whether Havre is dying or evolving. And, there's certainly creed on both sides of the argument there. Certain larger businesses, especially the malls, and I think we've discussed this in a previous episode, where, malls are just falling out of favor and small businesses are coming up. So I can't say for sure, what's going on there, other than they did point out that there is pretty low wages for those service jobs that are coming.
Yeah, I feel like that's the same for really service jobs anywhere, but I imagine that would be tough on top of that to be in small town America and then have, low income because, I mean, I can't imagine that their milk is going to be as cheap as it is in a lot of other places. I have no idea. I haven't bought milk in quite a while, but...
Hey, you're going vegan, it sounds like, or...
While I'm in Havre...
No.
No dairy in Havre. But in Great Falls, I drink a shitload of milk in Great Falls.
But you don't have to set your foot in a store. I tried the new Walmart online ordering thing, and you park your car outside, and they come out and bring you your food to you.
Won't even talk to you, huh?
Yeah, barely a word. I mean, the one person you talk to is friendly, and I can manage dealing with one person, which is nice, and I got a gift bag that included a few goodies.
Oh, excellent.
So I don't know if that's available down in your neck of the woods, but certainly up here in Missoula.
I believe it is. I haven't tried to give too much business to Walmart in that regard. I've probably given them more business than I'd like to admit. Of course, we all have in that regard. But...
I mean, where else can I get a car battery and cheese?
Sometimes you're going to need both.
Although I found out, because I looked, because this was a need I had, you cannot buy a car battery for the curbside pickup. They do not do that.
Ooh.
They also wouldn't recycle my oil on the back.
Some safety issues there, I imagine.
Yeah, maybe.
Ooh.
So, well, let's move on to the big subject matter of the show, which was being lives that matter. We're gonna, take a tour and discuss some law enforcement issues around the state, and as well as, some other law enforcement topics, we'll say. But first, let's dive into police pay, because Great Falls is looking for, looks like, a few new police officers, and I went through and I, rounded up the pay for most of the main cities. Unfortunately, there's not much data for our smaller counties and cities, unfortunately, but looks like they started an average, mid-50s, so about 55,000 for Great Falls. Missoula and Bozeman are higher. I think Bozeman almost 59,000. This is for a second year out of the academy cop, so essentially right when you're out of the academy. And billings, bottom of the barrel of the main cities at almost 54, so 53,766 for pay, and of course that's just pay, not counting anything negotiated by the unions, such as PTO and vacation time. Great Falls, I think they have a pretty luxurious package and pensions, so pensions and 401ks. So they're pretty well taken care of, and $55K is a decent chunk of money, especially for Great Falls.
Absolutely. Compared to what I've seen for... I'm trying to think where it was even at. I saw a smaller jail once that had an ad out for just a jailer position, I believe it was, CO officer, and I want to say it was like around maybe $15.50 or so, and it seemed a little low for doing that kind of work.
Well, jailers are different than they're still officers, right? But they're
believe so. Well, yeah, in that regard, I guess you would take the step up from correctional officer to, like, patrol officer. But,
is there a direct line there? I thought I'm not sure. I've known...
You don't have to. It's something... It's kind of like a degree in that regard of, like, you don't need it for the job necessarily, but if you have it, it's going to raise eyebrows a bit more. Interest.
Because I've known people who were, seemingly born to be law enforcement, and they started at the jail in some regard, and some of them, unfortunately, never made it into, well, of course the jail is law enforcement, but real law enforcement as in a sworn officer with a police department, so.
I see.
So I'm not sure if it's, maybe something else to research. I don't know if it's a direct walk or if it's different agencies or whatnot over there.
Yeah, law enforcement, I think we should just be flat out honest here, Jim. It's department we really don't have a whole lot of experience in because we haven't had to deal with them a whole lot in that, in any sort of capacity that's been that most people would,
Yeah, speak for yourself, Bryce. I'm a regular renegade criminal over here.
Whew. Jeez, the PO is going to be listening to this, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah, it's part of my community works. It's
I got to get in your hour each night. But I must say, though, with all of this, Billings, man, I would be furious if I found out that those assholes in Missoula were making, 4,000 more, it looks like almost.
yeah, 4,000 a year more. A decent chunk. And Billings is not that much cheaper than it's cheaper than Missoula, but I'd be more concerned about Great Falls. Great Falls, I think, has a lower cost of living than Billings, and those guys are sitting pretty good comparatively.
Indeed. Just from the amount of shit that we see in the news for Billings, well, I guess all of these areas do have their fair share of interesting news pieces regarding criminals. However, I gotta say that Billings seems like it's its own special place of chaos in that regard.
Yeah, it's one time was the meth capital per capita of the world. So I don't know if I don't know if Haver's taken that title or if or where that is per capita. Of course, maybe not a major hub, but yeah, actually I don't know. That's probably a question for the Billings police.
I don't think it's something they like to be spouting off as. I don't think it's a title they're proud of, telling people about.
Well, and with pay, of course, that pay, as I mentioned, was negotiated by unions, and that is a second-year pay. And I found that it, generally it tops out as far as based on longevity and I guess not performance or anything else, just seniority, and it sort of tops out for most of these places close to 80. Or right around there. And that number, it looks like that pay raises are negotiated by the union based on consumer price index and some other figures. So that figure actually goes up every year. So the $80K that you're making after 30 years on the force is, the same $80K of purchasing power, 10 more years in the future, which is, nice on them.
Indeed.
But of course, there are some discrepancies here, and we wanted to discuss some of the people that are usually are forgotten, which is police dispatchers, who are also union. I'm not sure which union they're usually in. It's probably a different one than the actual beat cops and etc. But there is a big discrepancy between dispatcher pay and officer pay, and they arguably have more things to keep track of, and they're heavily exposed to the same traumas. I mean, except for physical traumas, I guess they deal with more of the mental and emotional aspects of the job.
They absolutely do, just in the sense that, the chaos is going to hit them first off because that person that's calling in that chaotic moment is going to hit them right away. So they have to deal with a lot of that first time, the jitters, I guess, and before they relay it off, which, is the whole point of the dispatcher being there. Can you imagine that call having to go out to a patrol officer directly? Like, that guy would just be a mess. Like, they'd be going through police left and right. Anybody going through that kind of stress,
It definitely takes a special kind of person, and I guess there's not enough of them, because pretty much everywhere I looked, just about anywhere you live, if you're qualified to be a police dispatcher, you could be one, because they are, starving for people in most locations, it feels like.
Yeah, as long as you're trustworthy there and can keep it together in crazy situations and make sure that you can dial out and keep track of things all at once, you're the person for the job.
A special person, but I found on average they're going to pay you $5 to $8 less than a actual sworn-in officer.
Which, to hear that, I can understand why a lot of people would just rather not, and why you see a lot of people throwing the towel after so long of, like, I just can't do it anymore.
It will be a crossing guard or something where it doesn't matter. Back when I was going to school, I'm pretty clumsy and accident prone, but when I started going to school, I was going with the intent of being a nurse. They make decent money, but at some point in the middle, I decided that I shouldn't do any job where my mistakes cost people lives. So I'm also not a police dispatcher in that same line.
Yeah, no, it's way too way too much responsibility in that regard, and to be put into that direct line of not fire but responsibility, just thinking about it raises blood pressure. So yeah, no thank you. Pass. Best of luck and all the most respect to you for getting that job done,
And I have, had the opportunity to see them work once or twice. I was in a different life. I was doing some work up near Browning building work, and it happened to be the municipal building. And I guess at the time they were moving the 911 center from one derelict building to another, and I wasn't there doing anything of consequence, of course, but I was there, and the building at the time when I was there didn't have any plumbing. Just remember some of the officers came in, and they had the 6-pack and a pound from Taco John's, which is maybe the only restaurant in Browning right now, not counting the casino. Is there anything else up in Browning right now, Bryce?
I thought they had a Subway.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one is
Swear
worse,
to God they have a
actually.
Subway. But yeah, the town pump, I think, constitutes...
that should be a restaurant. Every time that town pump is on point.
Yeah, I'd say. I've
they
gotten
do.
chicken wings there before. It's pretty good.
Chicken wings, and they have the best corn dogs. They're always on point with their food at the town pump. So if you're looking for a good gas station burrito, Browning Town Pump is where it's at.
Indeed. Top notch, especially compared to, I gotta say, the Plentywood Town Pump, which I saw someone get a gas station from really late at night once, and any gas station dog at 2 a.m. is going to be a risky decision, but
Yeah, that's a dirty dog for sure.
Yeah, it was.
Well, so I was working in the proximity of these dispatchers and officers, and I was there for some time, and these group of officers had to leave and then come back as they had work to do throughout the town. But they got a 6-pack and a pound, or actually several of them, because they were feeding I don't want to say a whole tribe of them. That sounds terrible. But a bunch of people. And so at one point I had to go down to the IGA, which is the only grocery store over in Browning.
Oh,
and
what did they change it to? It's like a family grocery now or something.
Is it no longer an IGA?
I forget. It's got it looks like it's another maybe it's Glacier Family or something.
How low of a bar is it that you can't be an IGA anymore?
No, it's not like a bar lowering. Like the place has been remodeled. Like it was bought out by an independent venture that put money into it. It looked pretty good last time I was there.
Oh, well, this is it was still an IGA when I was there, I believe. So this is quite some time ago, and I had gone down there to pick up some cleaning supplies, and while I'm driving down the main drag, I just hear this siren going off. Of course, pull over, and I see this cop. It's not the Escalade Excursion, the large police vehicles that they have, just zoom by, and he's really trucking it like somebody's getting murdered. And I eventually get to the Glacier IGA, whatever it is, and I'm in there because there's no plumbing in there, so I'm also planning to use the bathroom. I walk the I pull up, and the car is still out front, just parked sideways with its lights still on. Officer's not in there. I was like, oh, geez, there must be something wrong here. But I see people still walking in and out of the place like nothing is awry. I walk in, go back to the bathroom, and I see that officer, come out and sort of wipe his hands on his shirt. It's like, yeah, Taco John's, 6-pack and a pound. Big emergencies in Browning.
Sometimes those lights really come in handy,
You just can't wait. And another building with no water. But speaking of native law enforcement, the Hardin Jail, or lack thereof, the Two Rivers Jail, as they call it, looks like that was built with bond money, which is basically a loan against future mineral taxes, all of which did not come to fruition because of the coal turned down and the transition to clean coal. But it took about a decade to get any inmates because the state didn't want any out-of-state inmates in this jail. Specifically, Brian Schweitzer with the state, which is, interesting that they would prohibit that, which sort of, put the nail in the coffin for this jail. And it's, and there's a bond measure out. They want to expand the other jail, not the Two Rivers Jail, but the other jail in Hardin. there's 2 jails in Hardin.
It's the prison industrial complex is afoot in Hardin, it would appear.
Yep. Speaking of that complex, for a short period of time, it looks like a company based out of California, looks like American Police Incorporated or something like that, was planning to take over the jail to make it a military training ground, or American Police Force Corporation out of California. Eventually found out that the guy running it was a fraudster. He sounds like when they first showed up, they had Mercedes and they labeled them City of Hardin Police, but of course Hardin Police hasn't existed for some 30 more years.
I don't think that the Mercedes would be their first choice. The closest dealership to get that serviced at is Missoula, I believe. Unless there's one in... I don't think there's one in Billings. I don't think so.
I am not sure, but
say.
You know, a Mercedes, the G-Wagon, it's the fastest SUV you can get, I believe. So it might be effective for them. So the American Police Force Corporation pulled out after some shady happenings were discovered about him, that he was in fact a previous fraudster and probably a current fraudster, and Brian Schweitzer had some hard words about the city officials in Hardin, many of whom are still city officials in Hardin.
Yeah, not much changes in Hardin usually, it sounds like.
Yeah, stay the course. We already got this jail. Don't change horses midstream.
Jeez. Currently, BIA is in control and operating it.
Yep, the BIA is in charge of that, which, of course, was sort of a sore subject, specifically for the Crow who were in that region, because a lot of Crow are housed there simply for proximity. But Hardin is a decent distance away from the reservation. It's, I guess, far enough to be an inconvenience to Crow families and such. So they a source of contention for the Crow, but they eventually approved it, and Hardin is currently asking for a bond measure to expand the other older jail, because they say it's too costly to use the Two Rivers jail, since they only need 100 inmates to be housed instead of the 430 plus that Two Rivers can handle.
Wow. Geez, someone had really big aspirations for this place. I can see definitely why was it Schweitzer or was it Bullock?
Schweitzer.
Man, Schweitzer, that guy just went down with quite the legacy there. I can see why he would want to turn down out-of-state prisoners for that one. We don't want you to bring your muck here. It's the same reason that people don't want, the immigration thing to happen right now. So I could see him gaining a whole lot of Montana support for that. Get out of here with your Maryland criminals. We don't want any of them here.
Maryland criminals, yeah, them specifically from Maryland.
Any sort of wrongdoer from Maryland, potentially,
And that is another source of contention. 430 people here, and that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but those people whom are housed in the jail are considered residents of the county they're in. So 430 more people in Hardin has potential to increase their political clout in Helena. However, those 430 people, of course, do not get to vote.
No, I was going to say, they're all just not here.
Yeah, that seems weird to count them as can we do a 2/3 thing? Is there something like that we've tried before? Or 3/5? What was that?
Whatever it was legal but immoral, and this kind of feels like it's treading around that same type. But that's what you get a whole lot of when you touch on anything with the industrial or the prison industrial complex, as it's called, which it sounds like there would be a whole hell of a lot of that involved with this, considering there's 2 jails in this town.
Yeah, a lot of it. They're definitely padding the population, and another concern that probably was a Schweitzer concern is we don't want to be the Australia for the rest of the country, I guess. So, for those that don't get the reference, Australia was
Schweitzer.
A prison combat. He didn't say that. I said that.
Oh.
Yes, but we don't want to be the Australia for the U.S. at large. And a lot of these people that get out of prison, especially those that are really serious about changing their ways and etc., choose a big change of venue. Some of these people actually stay in the areas that they were released from. You don't have to go back to where you came from, pending parole and other things, of course. So,
indeed, and if it's a community that they've grown to become accustomed to and hasn't treated them like complete outcasts because of their criminal status, then, I could see why they would be more inclined to stick around.
So, civil forfeiture. That has been a law. For those that are not in the know on that, that is a law that states that if there's reasonable suspicion that something you have, it's essentially putting your property in contention and on trial, is either the fruits or has been used in a crime, it could be confiscated by the authorities. So, for example, if you're pulled over and you were carrying, a couple $1,000s of cash for some reason, and the officer, has a reason to believe that it's, drug money, or you're going to use it to purchase or distribute drugs, they have full legal right to take that from you. And to get it back, you have to essentially go to court. And you've got to combat your property. It's a weird legal concept. Your property is accused of a crime.
Yeah, it's really fucked in that regard. Gosh, just thinking about it just makes my whole body tingle. Ugh. Some real Federal Reserve nonsense here. The fact that they can do that because it's not even necessarily yours, because it's considered just debt that you're holding on to, if I'm thinking of that correctly, right?
Yeah,
it's not your money, it's debt to the Federal Reserve that you just happen to be in possession of at that current time.
Yeah, exactly. And
which, if they want to forfeit that from you, they're within their legal right as a representative of the Federal Reserve, even though they're not currently technically the Federal Reserve. It's a really weird system. The Fed, as they're called. It's a hard concept
to wrap your head around, too.
Yeah.
Your
Zeitgeist.
Property has been accused
Have
of
you seen crime. Zeitgeist? Let's put on our tinfoil caps here real quick.
Yeah, we're gonna go far right on this, or left. I don't know. Where do those people lie?
This is where they kind of hold hands to cross through the river of conspiracy craziness, but then they sort of hang out in the river for a few hours. Zeitgeist. I want to say it was like maybe 2.5 hours, 3 hours or so.
I have not seen it, but it sounds like I'm missing out on it, Jim.
Well, you can find it on YouTube like everything else. Go ahead and add it to your Montana Voices podcast playlist at this point. Maybe I should add that. I think I can add like favorites of videos to our channel that will show up. So maybe I'll tag that in this. We'll tag it in the
oh man,
in the description.
We're gonna get on those people. But you know what? Their money spends the same. So
indeed. Regardless, though, let me get back to it. There, it was just enlightening because it does touch on how the Federal Reserve was created and works and all that. So it's been years since I've watched it. I'll have to go back and watch it now and probably regret everything I just said because it was pretty fucking crazy in every other regard of a film, but had some things that were fairly eyebrow raising, at least. So yeah, that sucks. Federal civil forfeiture like that. Don't tread on me.
Affects people, especially when you're pulled over. And I know somebody that this has happened to, and I think for obvious reasons he wasn't willing to come forward at the time. This is a gentleman that I had sent off to buy this disclaimer, this was well over 20 years ago, I think. I had sent him off to buy a marginal amount of weed, and
statute of limitations is gone on that.
Yeah, and I was under 18, so this is also a minor. I can't be held. So I sent him. It was a marginal amount. It was like $100 or something. And then he goes off for a while. We don't hear from him. We try to track him down. And this is before the age of cell phones as well. Eventually, he turns up and he says he was walking on the street. The police saw him and they took all of his money. And none of us could believe it. We were very mad at him.
Yeah, I would be mad too. So you guys beat him up, right?
Well, how many crimes am I going to admit to here, Bryce? That's
snitches get stitches, I tell you that. So
we had a stern talking with his mother.
Yeah,
that for sure. But apparently that actually did happen, and I chatted with him again and sort of messaged him out of the blue. I was like, "Hey, remember that time that I sent you to buy weed, and you said the cops stole your money. I was like, yes. I was like, all right, so that actually happened. Because either way, I don't care at this point, obviously. But yeah, that actually happened, and they cited the same thing. He didn't have anything on him, but he sort of looked like definitely a punk at the time, and they assumed this money was going to be used for a crime, and they were correct, and they said confiscated that money. So
at that point, though, so see, now that's the fucked up thing, though, is that they can take it if they don't, without the full, just going off of the assumption that you're probably going to use it to buy drugs. So, fuck, it's just illegal to be homeless now. It sounds like what you can't look even a little bit grungy. And if you got a couple bucks on you, are you sure you're gonna go buy food for yourself to eat there, junkie?
Absolutely. Well, there is some good news here, because in 2015, Montana we changed the civil law on this, and we're actually ahead of quite a few states on this. They can still do civil forfeiture. However, that civil forfeiture must be associated with an actual crime that you're being charged with. So instead of just saying, I don't like your patches in your jacket, you're definitely going to buy weed, so I'm taking your money, they actually have to charge you with a crime related to this money, such as, possession with intent or something along those lines. However, we are still getting a D- rating from the people that do the civil forfeiture thing. I had the link there. Independent Justice Review, IJI.org. It's a weird abbreviation. We get a D- from them because they state that they are against the state keeping 100% of the funds when they do a civil forfeiture. But once again, I'll point out that the property cannot be taken without a conviction of a crime. So I'm going to call BS on that rating.
Yeah, it's a little fishy there. Jim, I gotta ask there. You say patches or jacket if they don't like that. You had a crust punk buy your weed for you, didn't you?
Yeah,
Here,
maybe.
Just go down to just give me some weed. And he's like, yeah, sure, man. And, I just picture Fred Armisen from Portlandia buying you weed and getting stopped by a cop.
That's pretty accurate, actually. Yeah, well, in hindsight, there's better ways to get weed, especially nowadays. But
yeah,
speaking of weed, just about at the store, the Blackfeet are fighting the feds, specifically the BIA, over weed, because the Blackfeet did vote to allow medicinal marijuana, but the BIA just said, yeah, how about no? And I didn't know that they could do that.
Oh yeah, no, that I mean, anytime you drive onto the res, they always have the signs of like you are now on federal land there, and you're subject, I forget what the law is, Terra Ordinance, I believe it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to.
Whatever it is, essentially, it means like this is federal land. You're being watched at a federal level while you're here. As you've seen, what that really means is if you get pulled over and you're not a tribal member, they're just gonna wait for a non-tribal member to come deal with you. But
or most likely not deal with you at all, depending on
potentially, but. If there's a federal officer in the area, by golly, you're fucked. So, I just, yeah, I always knew that the tribe was kind of overheld by the feds in that regard, and that's why up until this point, all of the reservations, it's been illegal for medical marijuana or recreational marijuana, for that matter. For Blackfeet to vote on it, I thought that they had to clear that with the BIA first before they could even do a vote on it. So,
well, that goes against the logic and the spirit of independent, sovereign, or domestic dependent nation, or whatever verbiage they put in there. But it definitely has the word sovereign in there. Independent, domestic dependent nation. So they're dependent on the nation around it, obviously. But independent goes against that.
Yeah, it's really weird in the way that they kind of just, I feel like this is a way they're keeping their grasp over the tribe, and I feel it's a little, it's a little messed up, because, like you said, they're supposed to be sovereign. They're trying to do their own thing there. They're trying to get with the times like we see so many other states doing right now. It's not going to be very long before everybody's on board with this. They're just trying to get on board with it as well, currently. Probably to help out their economy right now. Gosh, shocking. They want to do something to make things better in their community? Phew. So they proposed this. Everybody seemed to be on board with it within the community. They push it upstairs to the paper pushers at the federal level, and they came back and said no because Uncle Sam is just not down with the green yet.
Oh, I believe the BIA is the law enforcement agency on the Blackfeet Reservation, since Browning no longer has a police force or a town, maybe? I'm still not sure about that. As with a lot of things, it's as far as native matters, it's complex and very intertwined, and sometimes seemingly doesn't make any logical sense.
I see. We really should get some sort of correspondent over there. Do you have any family members over on the Blackfeet Reservation?
In Browning, unfortunately, I do not. We are further west on the Flathead.
I see.
So, yeah, I don't really have an insight there, but of course, the Flathead, the Salish Kootenai, and Browning, are, as well as the Crow, all of our reservations completely different. Like the Hellgate Treaty of 1855, I was reading through that language because I was on a state park where they had a sign, and I read it to the kids so they can be educated. They weren't thrilled, but some of the language, I think, towards the end of the Hellgate Treaty of 1855, basically says that natives have to be nice to white people, which is a weird thing to have in a treaty.
That sounds like something that how 1800s of us.
And to provide passage, also stuff for roads and things like that. But basically, to be nice, I understand the spirit of not warring, I suppose. Although I don't. I'm not even sure what sort of war the Salish and Kootenais had.
Well,
at that time, so.
When you invented the newspaper, you can print whatever the fuck you want in the newspaper. So they really just painted a really negative portrait overall. And then on top of that, when you dominate and paint a negative portrait, you can then point your bloodied finger at them and say, "Look what you did, you son of a bitch." And, what can they do but say, "All right, fine, quit killing us. Write whatever you want, we'll sign it." So I could see 1800s white America dropping in some crazy literature to make themselves seem like they were the white knights in the whole situation.
Of course, the white knights. We skipped a few steps. First, you have to kill 90% of them with germs because they have no immunity to the diseases that you contacted from animals because you lived in a literal cesspool in Europe.
Sorry, bro.
Of course, not intentional, but then you get the blankets things later on, and it's it might as well have been intentional. It was our intent. I'll say our intent, I suppose. Geez, this is going to a dark place, I guess.
Yeah, we should call this episode 10 the dark place here.
Yeah, but getting darker on the high incarceration rate of natives. There seems to be disproportionate enforcement as well as convictions of natives. Is there, or the ACLU seems to think so, and they're have been making an issue of this for some time. And of course, the law tries to be blind, but anybody that's ever dealt with the law can tell you that it's not. And definitely not in my opinion. I don't want to speak ill of our any specific officer or agency, but I can tell you that there is a disparity to how you're treated depending on a number of things, such as how much money you have, for example, or where you're coming from. So I would not be surprised if they were able to document some of these injustices there.
For certain. I assume that skin color also probably comes into play at some point, in some regards.
Well, absolutely, and also, I suppose, who is doing the enforcing? I mean, we talked something about our local PDs where, those are people that there's a sheriff that you can vote in. There's meetings that you can go to. There's people you can talk to that, when you're talking about PDs, or the police department, it's, somebody that might be your neighbor or somebody that at least lives in your community. When you get more abstract from that and you start talking about, highway patrol, where you're working with somebody that, you definitely have never met before. You have no idea where they're come. And you get to the federal level where there's, I guess, not that liability. I mean, the BIA enforcing laws in your land, who's in charge of the BIA? Of course, the federal government. But these aren't people you can vote for. And if you have a complaint to make, who do you even talk to? And will they even care? I'm going to say most likely not.
Yeah, it's, I imagine that would be an intimidating phone call trail to make in the first place.
I'm still not sure even whom to call, but speaking of other things that might be disproportionate, Gazette did a piece, the Bill and Gazette, on how a Montana priest and the bad ones got specifically dumped on reservations, which
yeah, I could definitely see that happening as well there. You see a lot of scandals kick up about stuff like that. Specifically for the reservations, I want to say, I think it was South Dakota or North Dakota. There was a documentary as well there about how back in like the early 1900s eras, they had a lot of that happening.
Well, that was before they were raping them, or during?
I think currently, or not currently, I guess I should say that's a bad word, but
yeah, and probably currently. Probably. I mean, how much has the Catholic Church really done to clean up here? I mean, some people they are coming out. They are being transparent that says these are the things that we did. But these things were happening in the 90s and early 2000s before, probably even after the big, Catholic scandal came out.
Yeah, I don't know. That's another topic, Jim, that I really don't have a whole lot of experience in the regards of, like, I'm not a Catholic, I guess, and it always seemed to me like a weird entity in the sense that it's got structure, but a really weird structure to it. Like, there's no like, is there a Catholic website? Is there like a Catholic.com?
There is a Catholic.com.
Is there really?
Yeah, but there is probably registered the same place as Jehovah's Witnesses.com.
JW.org.
JW.org.
Because that's
probably .org.
Well, because that's my background, is the JWs, and it was to a T structured. Everything down to the books that they would write after the fact to translate how the Bible was written and what the Bible meant to say to you. So, that's more what I was accustomed to with religion. And so when I saw things with the Catholic Church and stuff like this, for me to see it from that perspective, it seems like it would be a big issue that would be very hard to control, because do they all really call back to the Vatican? Does the Vatican control all of these places?
Yes and no. Being of, I guess, Mexican descent, somewhat familiar with the Catholic Church, more than I'd like to, but I feel that now I'm not advocating for Jehovah's Witnesses or the Klan over there, but I will say that they get a bad rap as being compared to a cult, whereas that same lens is not applied to the Catholic Church, which probably should be, in my opinion. Once again, not advocating for Jehovah's Witnesses or any religions, while I talk crap on both of them.
Well, Jim, the thing they say about a couple things they say about a cult. What's the difference between a cult and a religion? A tax break. And then on top of that, how can you tell if you're in a cult or if you are in a religion is the reaction of your fellow members when you tell them you're thinking about leaving.
Well, you came up in the J-dubs, but sounds like you guys got out just fine. But I understand that the rest of the folks don't think you're out. You're just estranged or something along those lines.
Inactive, I believe, is the term.
Inactive. But did they do anything to bring you back? I mean, I imagine they, brought you a potluck or something. Immediately after. But
they're still, if I see any of them in public, I'm sure they'd be like, "Hey, coming back anytime soon?" The normal stuff you'd see, but it's about, for me, what you would expect from, if you saw your pastor at your church here in Great Falls after you hadn't been there in, a few months or whatever, and you'd be like, "Hey, where you been?" But really nothing more than that for me. But other people, it's a much more darker tale down that JW path for others. It just, and on that regard, in the reservation dumping ground there, the J-Dubs just recently had a huge lawsuit where they lost millions in a settlement to a couple of people in Thompson Falls for doing things very similar to this, in which they tried to cover up and make allegations of pedophilia go away.
Unfortunate, and I've heard less about that from the J-Dub, so hopefully it was less of an issue. We could hope, or an isolated incident, but not familiar enough to say either way.
Yeah, no, really, it's a fascinating topic that we could really just have an entire other podcast series dedicated to it. We'll probably trickle in some more topics about it later on within the show, I imagine, but I don't want to delve the whole show into it at the moment, but this just happened to bring up thoughts of that is why.
Yep, so, as late as the early 2000s, Catholics are still doing that. Of course, the Catholics have a lot of things going on, but I guess I will be forthcoming and say the one thing they don't have going on is God. So I guess we'll leave it at that, and of course, I'm not a Catholic. I'm some sort of Christian of sorts, and you're more secular, as I understand.
I'd reach out and touch faith in my own way, certainly.
That's almost uncomfortable. It's almost as bad when we talked about who we were voting for in episode 3 or 4.
Oh man, it's cringy early episodes there. That's a good point to make there too. Is that this is episode 10? I'd just like to give ourselves a round of applause. A lot of people that I see try and do podcasts like this usually don't make it very far. You'll see like episode 1 and 2 trickle in, and then a 3 and a 4 6 months down the road, and then it just dies on all of these channels. We're trying to be really consistent here, and I feel like we're finally past that breaking point. We're hit the double digits in our episode list here, I think that we're going to start picking up more and more steam.
Yep, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Lots of small things happen to make this a reality, and lots of small steps had to be taken to make it even better than it is. So we'll get there. But as far as things coming together, The Blaze and CRTV on our national discussion.
Oh, geez. Let me take a moment to choke on the irony here. We have two largely independent conservative outlets, very big on being on their own, offshoots, not tied to anything mainstream media or any sort of group. No one tells these fellas what to do, and here they are trying to piece together their change to put the bill through the mail. It's going to be not very long here before the band's all back together, and they're going to be touring under the old name of Fox News.
It'll be Fox Digital Media or something to that effect.
It's going to be like...
We know
FX
a lot
News.
of these guys
We're going to take out the O.
Exactly. But a lot of these guys, especially Glenn Beck, owner, host, CEO, whatever he is, to The Blaze News, obviously the main content converter. The Blaze was definitely in decline, in my opinion. They lost Tommy or fired her, and of course she did the natural progression, which is to go to Fox News. Yeah, they fired her. I recall. Fired her good. Yeah.
Yep, she flat out said that women should be able to have abortions on The View. And man, I tell you what, I'll bet you that old Glenn boy there had texted her the second she got off of that set saying, "Don't come into work tomorrow."
Yeah, we have a box. We're mailing it to your house with your possessions. That's it.
Yeah, it'll be outside. So
That had to be. Yeah, I do recall that, and then it's sort of been going down since then. I mean, especially on social media, you don't see those same tidbits or the 1 minute tomies or whatever they called them. I forget what we're saying.
Oh, final thoughts?
Yeah, final thoughts. But as far as I knew, there were no initial thoughts. But one thing at a time. So she's at Fox News, and I look forward to her getting fired from there and going to NBC, such as Megyn Kelly did. So we'll look forward to that in the future. And
yeah, it's hard to say. She's wow, she really. It's weird to see her on there now, because when she was on The Blaze, she was filled with so much angst, and a lot of times now they'll have her on. She has her own show, it seems, at nighttime. I'll have to go look at the actual schedule to see what time she's on, but I believe her time slot is scheduled for around the evening hours, and she'll usually be more aggressive in those segments, I've found. But occasionally they'll have her on for Fox and Friends in the morning hours, like super, super early, and you can tell that gal needs some sleep, and consistently, because some mornings she gets up and it's a whole different Tommy. She's really, calm, not fired up.
They have to keep her pretty sedated.
I feel like
have her presentable for network.
I feel
TV.
Like right before they go on air, she goes on air. Someone just comes up to her with an iPad and, here, this was for you, and then it's just a compilation video of Hassan Piker.
Hassan from the Young Turks, I believe it was.
Indeed, her arch nemesis there. I believe they would always go at it.
Who are not combining with anybody as of right now, by the way.
No, they're living large there off of independent donations through their YouTube channel.
Donations, and they also do have a membership.
Oh yes, they have the premium membership thing that's like independent of YouTube. Crazy how they're allowed to get away with that, but that's why I guess YouTube's really cool in that regard. Just wish that Alphabet would be able to branch out that kind of versatility and workability to their other platforms. Looking at you, Google Music.
Yeah, well, Google loves making things, so. But not keeping them. Hangouts is going away, I found out, which is going to be troubling for us in the future. But
indeed,
maybe getting too much into the national scene there and too much into the geek scene. Roll it back in with Biden in Missoula, perhaps making a first step or a bid for the 2020 Democratic nomination.
I'm so down. I've had a lot of people tell me that it's not a good idea or anything because of his age. That's going to be a factor, I believe. However,
isn't he only a couple years older than Trump?
I believe so. The presidential election, they're saying, is going to be another 2 years out, though, and so that'll put him even that much further.
Yeah, well, they're all old. I mean, we almost voted for Bob Dole, as I recall.
Indeed. And I think that you would see a lot of people back Biden, just given that we've seen the man's track record. We know what this guy can do, but I think you're going to get him up there in the final rounds, and it's going to be him up against Beto, and that's where you're going to see some contention, I guess. I don't know. The left-wing ticket's going to be a wild card this time around, because you're going to have those two. You got Bernie with the steel chair potentially at any given point. Who else?
Speaking of people too old to run, my goodness.
Hillary. Oh, Hillary could still be in there. People have been asking her, and she's made a couple jokes. She said that she was thinking about running for parliament, and man, the crowd just roared with laughter. The Facebook did not. They just roared instead. But who else? Cory Booker has talked about it. Kamala Harris, I believe, has. The gal from New York that everyone hates,
Alexandria or Cortez
Alexandria
or
Cortez
Casio.
or Sazio or Casio.
People in Montana appear to be awfully concerned about what happens to her in New York.
Very much
which
so.
Is very interesting to me.
Usually people in Montana are of the mindset of fuck New York. You guys
New
suck.
York City.
New York City? You mean fuck you guys. And I stand by that. Fuck New York. But I say that.
I've never been, but I'll take your word.
Well, it's an all right place. I have a lot of family that lives from New York, and my family, both of my parents are actually from New York, so my entire family hails from the New York area. But I can tell you that I, as a Montana-born citizen, really don't like big cities. They freak me out. The population density there is a huge issue, and I can see why there's so much crime and chaos and craziness there. There's just too many people cramped. So either way, Cortez, you have a lot of angry people if she runs, man.
Well, that would be, she's still going to be too green at that point. I mean, she's only going to be, not even 2 years into her first term. So, I don't know, but some people appear to really like her. Also, some people appear to be really concerned. I don't know how they get all these pictures where she looks crazy-eyed. Those have to be photoshopped, I would assume.
Hard to
or
say.
She just looked bewildered, crazy-eyed in every picture.
Yeah, it's the same people that would usually give me shit about any of the pictures I posted about Sarah Huckabee Sanders' lazy eye,
Yeah, it's amazing. When you paint it with that brush, it's you see things differently. But I wonder
because you
if it's
see
going to
two
be
different
like
angles.
You remember 2016 in the Republican primary? I think there, 20 some people in there, and it got really crazy for a while.
Oh, it was a Hall of Fame up there on the debate podium, I guess you would call stand.
Stand and they had to widen the stage. My goodness.
Yeah, there's tons of people there. It was insane. To keep things rolling here, though, so Biden showed up. Our boy, he made good on his promise. He was going to give the people of Missoula a great show. Steve Bannon, former, I believe he was the campaign director, high up there with the Trump 2016 campaign.
White House strategist.
Strategist. And after the campaign was done with, he left. He went off to go do some things in Europe. At the time, Trump tweeted out some things about him that made it seem like maybe Trump didn't like Bannon as much. But the whole time, Bannon was saying, it's all right, I've got Trump's back here. And pretty much, sort of every interview I saw, he kind of takes credit for the entire election win for himself. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next couple months here play out, given everything we know currently about the current climate and situation surrounding that election. But yeah, he was supposed to come to Missoula, ended up not coming here. According to the Great Falls Tribune here, a forum on the future of populism scheduled for next week in Missoula has been canceled because Speaker Steve Bannon is not available. The former White House strategist was initially scheduled to deliver a keynote speech at the 2018 ACE Advances in Computer Technology and Entertainment Conference planned at the University of Montana from December 10th through the 14th. So tomorrow through Thursday, it looks like.
Man, almost a week-long conference.
Wow, dang, quite the event there.
Could Missoula tolerate Bannon for that long?
Oh, geez, I was going to say, is he going to be there all 4 days? That'd be insane. Hang with Ban.
I'm just thinking of those videos of, was it Jordan Peterson, like when he tries to go to Berkeley, and would it be the same scene that we saw there where he's just getting shouted down everywhere?
Yeah, it would be insane for him probably. However, organizer Adrian Chillock, I'm butchering that name, canceled the conference in mid-November, saying the researchers were backing out in part because of Bannon and his given reputation, and because the conference was being co-presented with a forum called the International Congress on Love and Sex with Robots.
That is
Chiok said Bannon would still speak in Missoula on December 11th at what was called the inaugural Athenian Parisia Free Speech Forum. That sounds really white powery.
It kind of does. I'm still caught up on the Congress of Love and Sex with Robots.
I know. Isn't that just like mind blowing there? Like, so he was going to go speak this Athenian Parisian. Like, what? Man, I mean, I don't really know my Anglo-Saxon history in that regard. I guess I'd have to go back so someone could school us on this. But, geez, what an event. An inaugural, so it was the first one. So maybe they'll have a podcast of their own soon. But anyways, university spokeswoman Paula Short said the university received an email early last Tuesday notifying them that the event was canceled. So if you were planning to go hit up the sex robot Make America Great Again Steve Bannon tour at Missoula, sorry. It's no go.
Yeah, well, I guess my schedule's clear for next week. Yeah, well, no Bannon. We'll survive. I would like to think we are maybe more tolerant than some people over at Berkeley. So, I joke, but in all actuality, they would, probably be fine aside from minor protests, I would hope.
Yeah, I wouldn't be willing to bet.
But, I guess so. We'll end it on some good news for the teenagers and the fast food workers out there getting a minimum wage increase this year from $8.30 to $8.50, which is, as you know, already higher than the $7.25 of the federal minimum wage. And that does go up every year according to the Consumer Price Index, and I guess that is increasing.
It's great to hear. Gosh, I remember back when I first got a job, and the minimum wage I think was like $6.50, $6.75, somewhere around there. And to think back on that now, it's it just you can view it as inhumane now. But
someone argued that the minimum wage itself is inhumane. We're going to get back to our libertarian roots here.
Indeed. Well, if you take away the minimum wage, you effectively could wipe out all unemployment because you could offer jobs at any rate, and then everyone would have the opportunity to have a job.
Yeah, sweeping the floor, 20 cents an hour.
I believe, who is it that said that? I believe it was Michelle Bachmann. That was a direct quote from her, that if we took away minimum wage, that unemployment would go away.
Well, I don't know if it's a tool to solve, that is ridiculous. There is a point, and I suppose that there is a point where people are going to try to pay so low, and I'm like, I can just stay home, or I can do anything else. But, yeah, people can't afford to live on that, but I don't know if this is a minimum wage is a tool to fight poverty, or, maybe a topic for a future episode. Wage history in Montana. It certainly is colored and spotted like the rest of Montana history. So, but
indeed,
I'm happy.
I feel like we should try and get some. I don't know. Do you think we could probably look at trying to get people from different wage brackets on the show? I feel like we'd have to get them on at different times. I don't want to have somebody, making a ton of money talking to somebody who makes not a ton of money directly about wages. I feel like that's probably a recipe for disaster, but
it could be a forum. We'll get together with those robot love people. I'm just happy that Montana is higher. We've got to be better than all of our surrounding states, which are all at the federal minimum wage, except South Dakota, but that hardly counts because we barely touch it.
Indeed. We still haven't beat on the fact that you don't have to pay any fucking sales tax here.
Oh, even better. No sales tax. So, that concludes episode 10, Lives That Matter, of Montana Voices podcast, and we'll run through our business and sign off the air here.
Indeed. So, as usual, if you would like to listen to the podcast here, it's going to be Montana Voices Podcast.